Do not settle for a life that does not belong to you. Uncover and activate your fullest potential in this lifetime. Live your greatest life experience.
This is the Full Potential Living Podcast with Coach Ferguson.
Hello and welcome to the Full Potential Living Podcast, where our mission is to wake up the human race one individual at a time to self-actualize and live your fullest potential in life. Tonight in the High Performance House in Austin, Texas, we have a very special guest, an early adopter of Bitcoin.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Keep that. Bitcoin. Let's go.
Today's guest is not just an early adopter of Bitcoin. He's a visionary of a new world. SourceNode retired from sales in 2020 after betting big and retiring on Bitcoin. But rather than walking away, he walked within, founding the Holotropic Renaissance, a movement rooted in the idea of a world where every living cell is oriented towards its greatest potential. He's now one of the most respected voices on Nostr and a guide for those seeking not just financial sovereignty, but spiritual liberation. Once an atheist, Max has undergone a radical transformation, now deeply spiritual and devoted to unifying what all religions point towards: one source, one truth, one love. If you're ready to explore the intersection of Bitcoin, mysticism, and the next evolution of human consciousness, you're in for something special. Let's welcome SourceNode to the Full Potential Living Podcast. How you doing, man?
Thank you for that excellent intro.
Welcome to the podcast.
I love the Bitcoin thing. I hope you leave that because we call it corn all the time. We talk about the corn crop
That is
growing.
wild.
Yeah, it's like because somebody tweeted a long time ago Bitcoin and it just took off. It's a meme.
Oh my
The
God.
corn. Yeah, we talk about the corn like it's sort of a yeah.
Everything happens for a reason, man.
Yes.
Seriously.
Exactly.
Like literally did not, I've never even heard of Bitcoin, but I
It's a
will
thing.
somehow
It's real,
said
yeah.
it. That is wild. That is wild. Well, what's new and exciting in your life today, man?
What's new and exciting in my life today? I found a new dog park that's right on Lake Travis. I was chilling in the sun with some random people I met and letting the dogs run around. My dog was like humping other dogs. It was a fun day. It was good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So I always like lay the foundation of the conversation for everybody to get to know you. You know, you have such like so much to say around like all these lectures that we've listened to, you know, about the holotropic renaissance that you've created. But where did all this start? Like, you know, early on, was there some type of things that you went through, you know, when you were younger? Like, where did this all start for you? If you could like go early on for you.
A big question. So I grew up in Southern California. It was like in a situation that was materially quite nice, but emotionally wasn't. Like the family situation wasn't good. Oftentimes, you know, people choose their disciplines or their interest in life based on what didn't go right for them when they were a kid.
Right.
So like I chose psychology. So I went into psychology in undergrad. I got a master's in industrial and organizational psychology, which is like a intersection between work and psychology. We talk about performance and team dynamics and leadership and how to hire and measure performance, things like that.
Yeah.
So somewhere along the line, my interest in psychology, getting to the root of what it is to be human, led me into psychedelics. I discovered pot at Boy Scout camp, actually. Kevin Bach, if he's still alive. Yeah, he smoked me out at Emerald Bay with a little pipe that was made out of a film canister, like those old film canisters you took to CVS, you know?
Oh, yeah.
He put like a gum wrapper on the inside, which had a little bit of tinfoil, and then he used a reed from a plant to like make a pipe.
Creative.
I smoked weed out of that, yeah. And anyway, so I realized pretty quickly that what I was told in school around marijuana was not true because it wasn't a big deal. It was liberating and it wasn't overtly harmful. Later on, I realized that there's things, you know, you can definitely take pot to an extreme that's not positive. That happens. Yeah. Anyway, so the next step in line was to try mushrooms. because I thought, well, it grows out of the ground, it's natural. So I tried mushrooms with some friends, wasn't prepared at all, had a pretty startling experience, but it was positive. I was in nature and I never really forgot that. So like years went by, I kind of went into the matrix. I got a master's degree.
Yeah.
I got a corporate job. I spent 7 years in sales and automotive manufacturing. And the whole time I could kind of feel the world crushing my soul. Like it didn't feel authentic to me.
Yeah.
You know, it just felt like what I was doing for money. Of course, it's a classic millennial thing of, well, I want to be aligned with my job, right? I don't just want to work for a paycheck.
Yeah.
It's such a luxury in a way to think that way. But it's just, there's a certain momentum of our generation that realizes if we keep going down that road and not being aligned with ourselves, we're just going to create more of the same mess that we grew up in. And all of us see some piece of it, right? Like my piece was more internal, emotional. Other people see more in regards to urbanization or economics or whatever.
Yeah.
And so the Holotropic Renaissance really is this like idea I have of this culmination that many of us already feel, where all these different disciplines are weaving together into this tapestry that no one person can see, right? It's like the bug in the carpet. Like you don't know that it's a beautiful Persian tapestry. You only see what's right around you, right? But like I can see enough, like I can peek my head up above the carpet enough to see that there's like this emergence of consciousness coming up. So that's kind of the broad strokes of how I ended up with Holotropic Renaissance.
Yeah, I love that name, by the way, and I think we can definitely get into that more. But what do you feel like was, if we could like say, like what was the pain for you that started it? Like, we've kind of touched on it, but let's like get clear on that a little bit.
Yeah. My parents divorced when I was 3. My mom had a previous family, so I have a half sister and a half brother. There was a lot of turmoil around the divorce, and then I was doing week on, week off.
Yeah.
And for my neighborhood in Southern California, that was not that abnormal to have divorced parents.
Yeah.
And to be doing this
generation.
week on. Yeah, right. Yeah, I can only speak from my own experience, but it's not normal. It's not good. And I think that it was harmful to me, ultimately. I don't blame my parents. I mean, they were doing their best given their own traumas, and I've forgiven them to the greatest extent that I can. But then later on in life, like it just kind of, it spiraled out of control more and more. When I was 9, there was an incident that made it much worse.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get into the details on that right now, but it's been weighing on me my whole life, basically. Just like the relationship, the failure of the relationship of my parents and its impact on me. And not only that, but also the environment I was growing up in, the food I was being fed, the entertainment that I was consuming, the schooling that I got through state education, all of it, the chemicals in the water and the food. I mean, it's like this total microcosm of a much bigger issue that we're all participating in. Yeah. So it's like my story is not important, actually. It's more about, like, it's important to me in a biographical sense, in an intellectual sense, right? Like people go to psychotherapy and they talk for years and years about, oh, this is happening to me because my mom dropped me or whatever. And that's great intellectually, but does that actually lead to healing? Does that lead to...
Well, telling your story could really help people relate and could help people understand, you, and then understand themselves through you.
Yeah.
The power of story.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. And at the same time, I really make a point to acknowledge the story, but not get stuck in it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even though in many ways it does define me.
Yeah.
But ultimately it doesn't.
Yeah, right.
Because I'm just a soul.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow, that was a deep stare right there.
It's true.
So, yeah, certainly divorce. Like I personally had parents divorced before I was born. Maybe that was better, honestly. But definitely felt a lot of the problems and the pain there. Where did your purpose come out of that? Like what is your purpose or your mission now from that pain?
At different times in my life, again, getting attached to stories, like I've had it in my mind that I have this mission and I can capture this mission in a string of words and spit it out my mouth.
Yeah.
And it gives my life purpose, right?
Yeah.
But in reality, my purpose is to be present. It's not about what I'm doing. It's about how I'm doing it. right? So right now, my purpose is to be conscious of my impact in life, to help those who are around me who want help, and to survive in the process and to have a good time, right?
Yeah.
But more broadly, what I would like to be doing, right, if I were to assign myself a purpose, I would like to help bring peace to this earth, more peace.
Yeah.
This peace is ever present. Somehow we get disconnected from our higher self, or we get disconnected from God, and we create all this turmoil.
Come into this dream reality.
Yeah, right. It's not necessary, but clearly right now it is, right? So it could change at any moment, but right now it's necessary.
Yeah.
And I'm here to help facilitate a conversation if people want to have it. Basically, that's what it is.
It's clear that it's important for you to be present in the moment. That's almost like the ultimate, not spiritual hack, but just the ultimate thing to do.
It's
just
not
to
a hack.
Be here now.
It's literally it. That's it. That's the whole.
That's the whole
that's
thing.
The whole trick. That's what all the mystics have always said.
Right.
So Eckhart Tolle says. That's what Meister Eckhart says. It's Buddha, Christ, everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody agrees.
Right.
So
just be present, guys.
Just be right here. Just be be like the lily in the field. Be like the children. Be like the lotus flower. Yeah. Just open when you open, close when you close. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And somehow we get it really complicated. But what I've spent my time doing is really focusing on what the physical apparatuses are that are creating this disconnection that we're experiencing, right? Because as a man, I have a physical presence in this world that has an impact. I study the physical systems of how things are working and try to alter them in a way that's favorable to myself and everyone else, right?
Physical systems meaning your own body, or?
Oh, sure. It could be my own body, but I'm thinking more structurally in terms of the financial system, the infrastructure that we live in, the architecture. Yeah, those things.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. So you want to bring more peace if there was more of a purpose. I said this on the last podcast. Actually, my father's last name, people are always surprised, but is make peace.
Really? In what language?
Make peace. So is that in English?
Make peace.
Make peace. Like exactly how it's spelled. Like just one word. Wild. Right?
Yeah.
But
Love that.
I bring that up because I feel like it is what I'm here for. I'm here to bring people together specifically. That's why I felt like we aligned, because when I was reading through your stuff and listening to the lectures, because I was like, yeah, that's what I'm here for, is to really bring people together, is to make peace. Because I have kind of this, I always am looking for like, okay, we have different opinions that are maybe of the ego that are like on the surface really, of like, we want to live this certain way. You want to have this type of a religion, but find, especially in this day and age, politics, how can we find the common ground to come together?
Right.
Yeah. Because ultimately that's where the peace is for everybody.
Yeah.
And so for me, I felt like it was really cool to like listen to a lot of these lectures and look through it, because peace is something that I'm here for too.
We're in the right room.
We're in the right room, man.
Yeah.
So, okay. So we've got kind of an understanding, and for people out there, listening, listen through the whole episode. We're going to get into Bitcoin as well. We're going to get into spirituality. Make sure you listen through the whole episode, because there's going to be a lot of jam-packed stuff towards the end. We're just getting started. People listening out there today that we were kind of talking about before was, how can we now understand like Bitcoin for the average person who maybe has not, spent too much time. Maybe they're just hearing about it, or maybe they've heard about it for a while, but they haven't had time.
Right.
They're working in the matrix. They're working on things. They're studying things. They don't have time. If we were to just kind of bring it down to the base level for everybody, like what is Bitcoin? Why is it important, especially right now?
Yeah, love that question. And I love to be on a non-Bitcoin podcast, because I've been on 3 or 4 Bitcoin podcasts, and a lot of Bitcoiners like to interview each other, which is great, but it's good to branch out too. So the first thing I usually start with is, well, first, what's the problem? And there's a good video on YouTube for anybody who's interested. It's called What's the Problem? If you put in What's the Problem Bitcoin, watch that video. It's like 45 minutes, and it explains the whole problem, why the money is corrupting the political system. Once you see it, it's very obvious. And it's like you can't unsee it once you really understand it. But I'll give a brief breakdown. Basically, it goes like this. You have voters, politicians, businesses, banks. Okay? The voters and the politicians have a relationship, but because of the way the political structure is set up in this bipartisan system, it's more like the politicians are steering the voters than it is the other way around. And you can really feel that. Everybody kind of feels that. Whether they're red, blue, whatever, doesn't matter. I'm a libertarian, so I'll make fun of both sides. Politicians are getting steered by the businesses. There's a relationship between those two. And the businesses are lobbying the politicians, right?
Right.
And the businesses are getting money from the banking system. The money that's going to the politicians, they're running a deficit always. They're always running a deficit. There's like, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 years when Clinton was in office where we were in the black, but otherwise we're in the red, which means basically that the politicians are always spending more than they're getting in taxes, which means that they're not really beholden to the people. There's no accountability. That's not a political system. That's not we the people. That's not democracy. That's, you could call it like a techno-feudalism, whatever you want to call it. It's not what most people think America is. And if you actually look at under the hood and how it works, like a lot of people that open up a car hood, they look inside, they're like, fuck, that's complicated. Shut it, right? Yeah. It's like I opened up the hood and I was like, what's that part do? What's that part do? What's that part do? What's that part do? And certainly I can't tell you all of it. Like I'm still studying the bond market. That's a whole rabbit hole on its own. And the bond market is really the core of how this whole scam works. But the issue is that the central bank creates currency based on market demand, based on what's going on in that quarter, basically. They change their mind constantly. And they have meetings and they're like, interest rates going up. No, interest rates stay the same. Interest rates go down. It affects the whole global economy as one group of people, right? Yeah. So
what influences those decisions? For
many factors, but ultimately self-interest. That's an Austrian economic reality. It's all self-interest. So if those people are self-interested and they're not elected, then what is the system that we're living in?
Right. So you're saying basically that there's, I mean, how many people is that? 10?
The board of the Federal Reserve is made up of like the top 10 banks or something. It doesn't ultimately matter. I got to a certain point with the fiat system where I understood it well enough to know I don't want it. and that was enough for me. So the big picture problem is if you continue to use a money that is infinite, like the dollar. And the dollar, by the way, is the best of all the fiat currencies. The word fiat means by edict. Fiat is like, so in the Bible, fiat lux, let there be light. It's by edict. So it's like it's already a spiritual term. In God we trust on the money, got added in the 50s. So you're saying, let there be currency. This piece of paper is worth $5 and this piece of paper is worth $100. And they're the same size, but that one's worth 20 times more than the other one.
Yeah.
It's bullshit, frankly. They don't actually print it anymore. They just digitally create it. But because they can do that infinitely, what happens is everything gets more expensive forever, which is a hidden tax. We are getting taxed through inflation. What they're doing with that extra money that they're creating is running a deficit, I mentioned earlier. Mostly they're using that to bomb people in other countries that I've never been to and may never go to because they probably hate us because of this, right? Which is bad. I don't want to have enemies in Yemen. I've never been to Yemen. I've met like one person from Yemen and they were very pleasant. But if I were to go there with an American flag on, I'd be in danger potentially. And I don't want for that to be the reality that we live in. The key is to remove the ability for them to create value out of thin air. If they can't do that, then they have to actually go out and do something that's productive that helps people.
Wow.
Whoa.
Like all of us are.
What a fucking concept. Yeah.
Like everybody else is.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And just because it helps, I think, understand people see like there's, a small group of people that are kind of just controlling everything, controlling the world through the decision of like what to do with the market. I mean, that's crazy for people to.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a black pill, you know, like depressing, nihilistic.
Yeah.
And it can get kind of paranoid, and you know, you can go down that rabbit hole. The Creature from Jekyll Island is like worth reading if you want to see the whole system. Skip the whole part about gold. I'm not interested in gold. But the good thing is that now we have a solution, which is Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin does remove that power from this apparatus.
Right.
And the Trojan horse is well inside the gates at this point. So it's like, I can say this openly on camera. Dozens of other Bitcoiners have been saying this for many years. Bitcoin is going to completely change the financial industry forever and the entire planet. And it's happening. And me saying this, notifying anybody, there is not a pair of ears on this planet that could hear this and suddenly say, oh, I'm going to do something about it. You can't stop it. There's nothing you can do to stop it at this point.
Why is that?
Because of the way it was designed, because of the decentralized nature of it. If you crush one person or even one whole country worth of Bitcoiners, it doesn't matter. It doesn't change the fundamentals of what's happening. And so this thing's happening whether the current moneyed elite want it to or not.
How about this guy? What was his name?
Satoshi
Nakamoto. Satoshi Nakamoto.
You mean Craig Wright? No, I'm just kidding. That was a joke for my Bitcoiner buddies. He's an asshole. No.
Satoshi Nakamoto. He came in and started this, and then 2 years later, he's gone off the face of the earth. What do you know about him?
What do I know about him? Well, I've read most of what he's written down that has been attributed to him. So I read the Book of Satoshi, which is like all of his forum posts. A lot of it's quite technical. I'm not technical enough to really understand the coding that went in early days. And then there's a series of emails written between him and this guy Mateus, I think. I read a lot of those as well, and it was very interesting. He was a very stoic individual, I think. You know, everybody can kind of project onto what they read, and they can try to guess about what kind of person he was, but he was very careful about what he revealed. I think probably because he knew what he was up against, like this system that was going to be very unhappy about this invention.
Yeah.
And what he probably didn't quite appreciate, and something that I think many other Bitcoiners even now don't really appreciate, is how difficult it is to understand why this thing is important. In the sense that, like, there are politicians right now adopting Bitcoin and talking about Bitcoin, and they don't really realize that in the long run, it's going to make them much less powerful.
Wow.
Yeah, but they don't see that because they're thinking in very short time increments. They're thinking about a problem that they have this week or this month or this year that they need to solve. Bitcoin helps them to solve that problem. What they don't see is that 5-10 years out, the job won't exist anymore.
So how does this equalize the plane so much?
So there's the economic theory called the Cantillon effect, or Cantillon, maybe. He was French, I think. So Cantillon. Basically what he discovered, this was in the 1700s, I think, was that the people that got the most benefit from monetary inflation, which is an increase in money supply, were the people that were the closest to the money printer. In his time, it was the gold mine. So like if you strike gold somewhere, the people that were the closest to that gold mine, they're selling gold at the present market value of gold across the economy, right? As the gold trickles out into the economy, it dilutes the supply and the price of gold drops. But when you first spend it, it still has its present value, right? So in our system today, it's like that times 1,000,000. When you take out a loan, and you receive $1 million, you're spending that $1 million at today's valuation. But once that $1 million makes its way out into the economy, all the goods rise and the dollar drops because of the dilution, right? It's like, if you get a Coca-Cola and it's only 20% Coca-Cola, right? It's like, you would be like, there's a lot of water in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our currency, is like watered down, or it could be whiskey or whatever.
Watered down value.
Yeah, exactly.
Watered down whiskey.
And so, I tend to think of it like a champagne tower, right? You got a champagne tower and you're like pouring water into the top of it. And it's like, it's slowly trickling its way down until it's all diluted.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. So the value of it over time is just basically eventually going to be zero.
Yeah, every fiat currency goes to zero eventually. I mean, it's like an engineering reality. It's not even economic. It's just, you know.
So, okay, so politicians are buying into this, but they don't even know that maybe down the line, they're actually losing power, and kind of what about everybody else out there that's listening today? Like, why should they be so interested in maybe starting their journey in Bitcoin? What makes it so interesting now, or why should they consider it now?
Right. So, yeah, what did I say earlier? If you save in dollars, everything gets more expensive forever. It's literally designed. That's the express purpose of the dollar, is to be inflated at a consistent rate every year. They shoot for 2%. Ask them why. Why 2%? Nobody really has a good answer, except that 2% is about what you won't notice. So that's what they can get away with, is 2%. The reality of that is actually that we're losing a lot more, because price should be dropping. Like, as we increase productivity, things should be getting cheaper. And so there's a lot more inflation beneath the surface. It's like an iceberg. So minor side there. But okay, so if you earn and save in dollars, everything gets more expensive forever. Rent gets more expensive forever. Food, clothing, everything you want, travel, more expensive forever. And even people our age have been around long enough to see that happen, right? Like groceries, I used to be able to go in and spend $40. Now it's like I'm spending at least $100,
Yeah.
Right.
It's like easy.
Yeah. Okay. If you save in Bitcoin, it's not real easy to earn Bitcoin these days, but if you buy Bitcoin and hold it, everything gets cheaper forever because there's no leakage. You're storing your energy in something that doesn't degrade over time, because the inflation rate reduces every 4 years. It's called the halving. And if you look back through Bitcoin's price history, usually there's a huge price increase every 4 years.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, it's doing something crazy. Oh, it's dead. Oh, it's doing something crazy. Oh, it's dead. And eventually you realize there's something beneath the surface here that's happening. It takes people, you really have to look at it specifically. So I often don't tell people to buy Bitcoin, because telling people to buy Bitcoin is kind of like telling somebody to hop on a motorcycle. It's like, do your research.
Yeah.
Learn the different parts of the motorcycle, understand how it functions, understand the dangers of the motorcycle. Don't trade leverage. Don't ride around without a motorcycle helmet.
Yeah.
Don't leave it on the exchange. Don't trust Sam Bankman-Fried. Learn how to self-custody your Bitcoin. Take self-custody.
Yeah.
And avoid the crypto casino as much as possible. That's the other warning I give people.
Yeah. So what's the difference between Bitcoin and the other cryptos out there?
So,
why are you so confident in Bitcoin?
Yeah, I fell into the casino between a set of years. So Bitcoin was invented to solve a very specific problem. That problem, it's an old computer science problem. It's called the Byzantine generals problem. And what
Byzantine generals problem.
The Byzantine generals problem. It's a coordination problem that doesn't involve trust. Okay, so basically, here's the analogy that they use to explain it.
Okay.
You've got a castle on a hill. You have 10 generals around the outside of the castle. The attack is such that you need all the generals to attack at the same time, but they're not within earshot of each other. And so they're sending messengers back and forth between each other to coordinate the attack, right? And
telephone.
Yeah, no telephones. Yeah, well, even
if the game telephone.
Even yeah, sure. Yeah, right, exactly. Even if it was a telephone, you still have to trust that there wasn't any interference. You have to trust the other general. You have to, there's so many layers of trust involved. You have to trust the messenger. It's a really difficult problem. And if 9 attack the castle, failure. You need all 10. Okay. So Satoshi Nakamoto solved that problem using the blockchain, proof of work, and the difficulty adjustment. Those are 3 critical pieces to why Bitcoin's important. People only look at the blockchain. They're like, blockchain, it's great. It's like, okay, tell me another.
Sound like Chewbacca.
Yeah, right. Tell me another practical application for blockchain.
Yeah.
I'm open to
that.
it. I'm open to it. And I've heard a few suggestions that might be possible, but most of them have to do with perpetuating the current banking system.
Yeah.
See, in this Byzantine generals problem, The castle on the hill is the banking system. Okay. So the Bitcoiners are surrounding that castle.
Okay.
And
Okay.
we are coordinated in a way where we don't even have to talk to each other. If another Bitcoiner I've never met listens to this podcast, they're going to know I'm a Bitcoiner because of what I'm talking about. Like, we're on the same incentive.
Byzantine's generals problem.
They might know that, but they might not. But many of the pieces here, like, we all kind of sound the same because we're all in the same incentive structure, right?
Yeah.
It starts to seem a little culty in a way, but it's a cult where nobody's in charge. So it's like, okay, I would say the fiat system is a cult, actually, because you've got this guy, Jerome Powell, that's doing this and deciding what money's worth, right? That's a cult. Not only that, but we're also paying taxes to satanic pedophiles, potentially. You know,
let's not go there.
It's a cult. So we're coming with this solution to that. And now you have like Ethereum and Solana and XRP and blah, 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 whatever. And they're trying to create their own coordination structure that's separate from the
these are other cryptos you're talking about.
These are like shit coins, we call them.
Shit coins.
So they exist outside of our coordination structure. So you've got the 10 general, or let's say we've got 9 generals. We're all standing around. We're all like, yep. We all agree. And then we got one guy who's like, I like monkey pictures. I want an NFT. Like, there's no value. There's no value in it. I mean, I could go on and on about like why NFTs are garbage and why Ethereum is a scam and all of that. But the big difference I've noticed is that the people that are interested in crypto don't read books about economics and Bitcoin. They just don't read. Bitcoiners love to read. That's been up to this point, that's been the dividing factor. Right now, there's documentaries coming out. There's God Bless Bitcoin. There's the Eagle and the Condor, the hummingbird story from Costa Rica that's coming out soon. It's my buddy Matt and Paul put that together. There's several other documentaries coming out.
Yeah.
Dirty Coin is another one. And so it's going to push the Overton window. It's going to get a little easier to learn about Bitcoin soon for the people that don't like to read.
Okay. So has that been the main challenge for people not understanding Bitcoin, is just not taking the time to read?
I think the biggest challenge for understanding Bitcoin is the cult that we're living in today has a very specific set of ideologies that are baked into our economic education, our historical education, our political education. Everything that comes through state education is oriented around maintaining the state. So, of course, it's not going to hand you the keys to dismantling it, right? It's going to create an intellectual structure that protects itself. And so when the hardest people to talk about Bitcoin with are people that have economics degrees, largely, because they're so deeply entrenched in the prevailing system that it becomes very difficult for them to consider anything outside of that. And Bitcoin is decidedly outside of that system because it's not debt-based.
Yeah. So the system itself is the thing that it's so, intertwined in our everyday lifestyle.
Right.
I mean, so that's the biggest challenge for people. Okay. So then what's the opportunity if people can get excited about something 3, 5, 10 years from now that they can kind of look forward to? If they're like, okay, maybe I would consider, looking into Bitcoin now, reading more about it, watching some of these new documentaries coming out. What's the opportunity for everybody? I mean, obviously the value is, how would you put that again? The value goes...
No, everything gets cheaper forever.
Everything gets cheaper forever.
Yeah.
That's pretty valuable. But what's the opportunity for people? If we could put some numbers around it too, or some ideas, can people, have more freedom in 10 years? Can they retire sooner? What are some things that opportunities for them if they're like, okay, let me get into Bitcoin now?
Yeah. So I prefer to talk to people about what excites them.
Okay.
However, the reality of the situation is I don't think anybody's going to retire without Bitcoin. So if your plan is to have financial freedom, you're going to need some Bitcoin. That's the prevailing system is based on government debt, and governments are currently insolvent. They're bankrupt. If you were to look at the spending of a government and compare it to the spending of an individual, it's atrocious. It's like,
astronomical.
just a little bit more money, man. It's okay. I'll pay you back later. Don't worry about it. Don't worry. It's like they are absolutely degenerate.
Yeah.
And there's like a push right now with Elon. He's trying to like cut spending. What normally happens when the Republicans are in office is they will cut things that benefit them and leave things that benefit them. That's what happened when Reagan was in office. It's neoliberalism. And that's not going to fix the budgetary hole. Our debt, our interest on our debt is reaching the same level of our defense spending, which is about $1 trillion a year, give or take. It's like 800 billion. That's absurd.
Yeah.
There are some possible solutions in the works using Bitcoin. Okay, putting it into something quantifiable.
Or even just like the benefits of it for people out there. Or if you want to go quantifiable. Whatever.
So I really don't like to guess price values. That's been historically a great way to put your foot in your mouth, is by trying to guess what Bitcoin's going to do.
Yeah.
But I will say that if it's not worth $1 million by 2030, I'd be surprised. Yeah.
And
it's worth 80K or 84 today.
Right now, right? Yeah.
So more than a 10x between now and 2030. That would surprise me if we didn't do that. Based on what's happening today, everything is looking very bullish. So
people can start investing today, even putting $1,000 or what would you? Is there any
specific advice
for that?
Yeah, I do make specific advice. First of all, study Bitcoin. But the thing is that it's a kind of a chicken and egg situation. It's like people don't want to study Bitcoin until they own it, and people don't want to own it until they study it. And so usually it is good to encourage somebody to buy a little bit. So if you have a portfolio, an investment portfolio, you're not risking between 2 and 10% on Bitcoin. You're missing the greatest opportunity on the planet. If you own any government bonds whatsoever, they're completely upside down in nominal terms, meaning they're losing real value against inflation every year for the last, 10 years. So get yourself a little bit of Bitcoin. If you don't have a portfolio, but you have an income, buy $20 a week. Most people can afford that, right? It's really easy to afford it if you start cutting out bad habits, right?
Yeah.
So stop getting soda, stop buying 100%. That McDonald's, whatever. Save up $20 a week. It's not that hard. Put it into Bitcoin, and you'd be surprised what that does for you in 2-3 years. The other thing I usually say is be ready for some volatility, because sometimes it'll double in a week. Sometimes it'll drop by 30% in a week. Measuring a new asset entering the market that nobody knows what it is yet. I know what it is to some degree. I don't think anybody fully understands Bitcoin, really. But I understand it more than 99% of the planet, probably, realistically, just based on what's happening in the world and the conversations I have everywhere. But the other thing is, I lost it. Lost the train of thought.
That's fine. So as far as the risks go, if somebody's going to invest, then they need to understand, they need to be ready to lose. You said 30%.
Oh, that's what I was going to. The other thing is hold on to it for 4 to 5 years minimum.
Okay. Anything you invest?
I mean, ideally, every time I buy Bitcoin, my intention is to hold on to it for 5 years minimum. And So this is an economic concept as well. Time preference. This is so huge. Okay. This is a spiritual rabbit hole in itself. Okay. Fiat currency, because it's constantly debasing. This is the express purpose of inflation. It's to motivate spending. Okay. Why does it do that?
The expressed purpose of inflation is to motivate spending.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Because if there's deflation, people hold on to their money. They save. Okay. Which is good for the individual, but it's bad for the economy. Okay. Now, the bad for the economy part is subjective based on the system that we live in today, which is primarily propagated on people buying crap that they don't need. Okay. But let's say that my money is gaining value every year, and it is because it's in Bitcoin. I still need clothes. I still need gas. I still need food. I still need a house, right? Yeah. Those are essentials. And it's okay for me to spend money on those things because I need those to live. There's many things that I could buy that I don't because my money's gaining value every day. But if your money is losing value consistently, you're more motivated to spend it today because it's going to be worth less later. And this
Yeah.
acts on people unconsciously. They don't realize.
Really? You think
Yeah.
unconsciously?
For sure. Yeah. I noticed the shift in myself, and the economists know this. They don't think of it in an insidious way. They're not like, ooh, we're going to manipulate people to not have savings. Like, that's not what's going on largely. They're mostly just wanting to keep the GDP up, the gross domestic product up, because we're measuring the whole country like it's a stock market. But we're not measuring people's health, people's psychological well-being, people's, relationship with their family, people's free time to do what they want to be doing, to create art.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to think like what would happen if we were all able to have, a level of financial stability that, like, what would happen if we were able to have that, like what would people do? I would like to think that people would start to move towards most of the time would move towards their passion more. They'd be moving towards like doing meaningful things, if we all could get everybody out of scarcity and be able to be more stable, people are not going to be perfect. There's going to be things they're going to do that are negative. But I would like to think that if everybody can move out of that place, the whole world's going to be a better place.
Yes.
You know what I mean? People out of this whole system. What I'm passionate about too is like, I just want to rewrite the rules of life. I was talking about this, all of them, because a lot of them suck. But I think I was talking with Jack about this like before this podcast, and it was like, yeah, I just want to like rewrite the rules, to living this life. Like, so many people are living a life that's not truly theirs.
Right.
They're just in the system. They're in the matrix, they're really not living that true, authentic, real life that lights them up. And I like to think if we didn't have this system, that we'd be able to, just live more of our purpose, like get out of like depression or mental illness or crisis, not have all these things happening, all this suffering happening, it'd be a lot better place.
Yeah.
So I would hope that that's I always think like, and we talk about it in this podcast too, like, what are we doing for the next generation?
Yes.
Jack and I were like, this is like the root of everything.
Yes.
I'm sure,
for sure. Every parent wants the world to be better for their kid.
Right.
Yeah.
If we changed this problem, and it all worked out, I mean, that would change everything.
Right.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Like, what is your vision of peace that you've talked about? Like, what could it look like, 20, 50 years from now, or whatever your vision is?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
I was reflecting on my process, right? Because I can't really speak for what anybody else is going to do when they have financial abundance, but I know what I started to do. And the first part was me not even knowing what I wanted. And so the first step for me was, I need to first stop the things that are hurting me and other people, because it's all the same.
Yeah.
Right? You're hurting yourself, you're hurting other people, vice versa.
Yep.
So I cut back on fast food. I stopped drinking alcohol. I started to be more intentional about my relationships with people. And then I wasn't feeling aligned with my job. I left my job. Luckily, I had the freedom to do that. Hardly anybody does.
There's a sales background
I was in automotive manufacturing.
Okay.
Yeah. I was dealing with BMW, Volvo, Hyundai, Kia, Volkswagen. And I appreciate many of the people there, but it was also a very high stress environment that was not rewarding to me besides the financial part.
Yeah.
The financial part was rewarding, but otherwise I didn't feel connected to
what
it.
What a lot of people are doing.
Yeah, right. The next stage was like a place of being kind of lost in neutral land. And then eventually I started to notice, okay, this really lights me up. Like, this is what gives me passion, right? It was kind of going back into my childhood in a way and reconnecting with what I always wanted to do the whole time. Because it's like there was stuff I wanted to do back then that I didn't get to do because I get caught up in this whole like, well, I really want to do that, but I have to go make money. And that is, I see literally every person I talk to is in this pull between those two
Yeah.
things. It's because the incentives that we live under are skewed. That's why. They don't have to be like that.
That's part of the essence of full potential living. Is like, personally, it may be a unique story, but this is what I want to bring more into the world too, is like, because my story is like, I've always done exactly what I wanted to, like, my whole life.
Nice, dude. Good for you.
And I didn't necessarily like go after, like, early on it was, I played college and then I played pro baseball, and I wanted to do that for a long time. For 2 years I played for 2 years, and then it was traveling around the world for 2 years and seeing the world, studying yoga in India, studying meditation in Nepal, to Botswana. And I was a mindfulness teacher in Botswana. I went all around Europe. I was like a whole 2-year journey. And it's not necessarily that I had like a bunch of money, and I was working, and then I would go travel, and then work and go travel. But for me, it's been like, it's never been a choice to not live like my passion. It's never been a choice to not, like, yes, at times, like, I've had to make money to do things, but it's always been, I'm going after my mission. I'm going after my passion. I'm always doing what I truly desire in life and not going to sacrifice that. And I think at a certain point, we should all be able to do what we truly love in life and not have to wait till we retire or till we're 60 or till we're like, delay our happiness, essentially.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what I was getting passionate about earlier. I couldn't remember. Now I'm remembering, is like, I want to rewrite that. Is like, we should be able to love our life from day one, do what we want, and do that our whole lives.
Yeah, I love that. That's,
you know?
I wish that for so many people. And at the same time, while you're saying that, I'm thinking about all the homeless people here in Austin that are drug addicted and so far from that. You know what I mean? And it's like, what went wrong? What is it that created the situation where there's so many people in that state?
Sure.
And how do we fix that on a systemic level?
Yeah. And maybe there's people that if they had stability and they didn't have to go after finances, maybe they'd be like, oh, I want to take care of those people that have mental health issues.
Certainly.
Like, I want to be a part of, giving back and help. Maybe there would be more people that could do that, because we know social work doesn't make much money. And it's like, so maybe there would be more people to take care of that problem.
Yeah. Right now, I think a lot of people see those people on the street almost as a warning, because they're only 3-4 steps away from that themselves.
That's good point. Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, nobody really has a safety net.
Right.
Because nobody has savings, because 70% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are in debt.
Yeah.
So it's
tough.
It's a kind of scary proposition.
So from what I heard from you was, when you became financially free, you decided you basically, what you had to do was figure out what you don't want first and stop doing things. And then you were able to figure out, then you were in a lost period of like, I don't really know what I want. And then you started to find, those things that you truly desired. So is that because you've been part of the system and everything we're talking about, but how does that relate to like tapping into your body and your emotions more?
So there wasn't, when I talk about the period where I was lost, I always had a direction where I was headed. Yeah. And the direction I was headed when I quit my corporate job was, I want to go deeper into psychedelics. I knew there were answers there. Yeah. I knew that if I pursued that in an intentional manner, I saw it as the frontier of psychology.
Intentional manner, I feel like, is the key there.
Super key. That's what the whole lecture series is about. Holotropic Renaissance lecture series is about intentionally using these substances if you want to. It's not a recommendation. Yeah, there's a lot of frivolous drug use that I don't appreciate or condone, but it is what it is, So yeah, I took a lot of psychedelics for a couple of years. And some of it was maybe a little bit more frequently than was responsible, but I was suffering and I didn't really know why. And what I have learned is that it is the body keeps the score type of stuff. It's your body accumulates the energetic charges of what you experience and what's going on around you, specifically between the ages 1 and 7. And even before that, when you're in the womb, you accumulate these charges that stay with you and continuously attract similar events to you. until you have the chance to integrate that charge. Once you do, you can move past it. Sometimes you got to release it, scream, cry, yell, whatever. And then once you do that, and you can just drop the stories, drop the attachment to that suffering and let it be. And then you can just breathe.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's so simple. Like I even do with like some of my clients that will come on calls and everybody's in such a stressed state. It's literally like if you take 5 deep breaths in through the nose, it's like 1 deep breath. I feel better.
Huge difference.
5 of those.
Yeah.
Like it's so simple, but we can forget, stimulating the parasympathetic nervous system, like throughout your day, like pause and take 5 deep breaths. And when I was in India, Max, I studied yoga, I studied pranayama a little bit, and I started doing, some of this, some of that. And it, like the effects of breath work for anybody that hasn't done any breath work or would like to go into it more. I was like, when I first did it, I was like, why were we never taught this? I'm in the middle, like,
Right.
I'm in, I had the opportunity to go to India. Granted, I didn't have that much money. I just, I had a couple $1,000s and I was like, I'm going to figure it out. But, I went there and I started doing pranayama and like we would do it every morning. And I swear to God, like I would have the most blissful feelings and just relaxed states that I've ever felt in my life. And I would get up, we always woke up at 5 a.m. We went to sleep at 9. We woke up at 5 and we started the whole routine. And it was like, by the time the sun came up, I just remember I kept thinking like, I've discovered my breath for the first time. And I was 26.
Right.
I've just first discovered my breath. I was like, how were we never taught how powerful our breath is? Like never ever heard of it once growing up in the United States. And it's just amazing. Even like I forget it. Sometimes I forget it now, but having that realization was like, wow, the breath is so simple. It's right in front of us. It's how we can regulate. It's so powerful to get into that. And I know you've done a lot of breath work. So what's your experience with breath work and how did that start?
So actually right now I'm sort of mourning my sinuses, which I don't know. It's an Austin thing. Maybe my allergies are so screwed up. You're like, oh yeah, just breathe in through your nose. Feels so good. I'm like, yeah, I can't right now, which sucks. But I've been struggling with allergies for a while. That's an energetic charge for sure too. And I'll figure it out like when it's time, right? It's not really up to me completely. So, but anyway, the breath is like the gateway to yourself to get into your body. I read a yoga book about breath. I can't remember the title, but what they were pointing out is without food, you'll die in like a month. Without water, you'll die in a week. Without breath, you'll die in like 5 minutes. And so it's like, it's so essential to the energy that we live in. The pranayama is so, so critical. In every moment, you need it right now. And yet we hardly ever think about it. And we pollute the air and, it's in the East, they think about these things differently. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back thousands of years that they talk about these like ancient, rishis and saints that were literally just meditating and breathing. And like literally, I remember I actually said this yesterday, but like literally they talk about thousands of years ago, them taking out their digestive parts and like washing them.
Hold up. You mean their guts? Their organs?
Literally like
cutting?
Taking it out of their...
Oh, yeah,
and washing them and then putting it back in because they were so skilled with their bodies that they could literally like clean it.
That's a tough image, and that I don't doubt it also. I mean, if you dedicate your entire life to like some strange skill...
You could probably figure it out.
I'm sure, yeah. That's wild.
Yeah, crazy. Wild. But... okay, now let's talk about like I want people to understand also like an interesting part of Bitcoin. What do you think about like what would be the spiritual significance of Bitcoin? If I ask you that.
Yeah, there's a couple different ways to look at it. So Bitcoin often gets accused of being a cult, and I can see why. There are Bitcoiners sometimes that worship it. They worship Satoshi, and they're just like, Bitcoin's the answer, Yeah. I see Bitcoin as a tool. It is a tool. It's a network, just like the internet is a tool. Do you worship the internet? Maybe some people, but mostly no. right? And hopefully,
Just like AI.
yeah,
like,
nobody should be worshiping AI. Okay, it's a program. It's very useful
it easy,
tool.
guys.
Yeah, take it easy. Don't pray to the AI. So what Bitcoin provides is a baseline of safety. So if you're looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you need safety. It's like a foundational thing, right?
Right.
If you're constantly treading water and you can't save enough money to pay your rent, and you're looking out 20 years and you're like, I'm never going to afford a house, then you don't really know what it's like to be safe. And if you don't know what it's like to be safe, it's very hard to develop a spiritual practice. Now, I will say it's possible to have a spiritual practice and live, and you could be in prison, anything. You can have a spiritual awakening, but for the average person, they require reasonable footing in order to explore those, expand in those emotional, spiritual sense. You know, I think that Bitcoin creates an encapsulation that allows that to happen. Then my buddy Govinda in Costa Rica, he gave a presentation. I was down there a few weeks ago, and he's talking about money as the nervous system of society. The nervous system is carrying information to and from the central operation so that I know this is hot, that's cold, I need to move over here, my body needs to do that, right? And it's all coordinated and it's all moves together. Our nervous system is really jacked up and dysregulated right now because it's being pushed and pulled and tweaked and stressed, and there's booms and busts and all this stuff. And we're not flushing, we're not moving the energy. It's just stuck and stagnant. Bitcoin is a more natural nervous system. So if society was running in that way, we would be able to coordinate our activities way better. We would be able to determine what things should cost in a more effective way. And we'd be able to manage logistics in a more effective way. People wouldn't feel the need to be always in a hurry.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which brings back what we talked about at the beginning of the episode is presence. It's like the only thing that's ever happening, if we could just remember, like constantly, the only thing that's ever happening is presence, like the present moment.
Yeah.
But I think because of the system that we're in, we constantly have to be thinking, okay, what's my next move? How do I make my next dollar? You know?
Yeah.
How do I make my next dollar so I can survive, so I can do this, so I can do that? Even if we're not admitting it, like even people that are very, very successful are still thinking, how can I make more money? What's my next dollar?
Sure.
So we're always in this fast-paced hustle mode because it does work to make dollars, right?
Yeah, that's the incentive structure that it's like you're playing a board game, right? You start playing a new board game. It takes you a few rounds to learn it, but then once you learn it, you get into the swing of it, and then there you go. And before you know it, you're fucking your friends over at Monopoly, right? Because that's the incentive structure. But there are other games that are more collaborative, right? I think Bitcoin's a more collaborative game. It's competitive and collaborative, but it takes a few rounds to learn how to play. So like the first time you sit down to look at Bitcoin, it looks complicated. And you're like, whoa, what's going on? Like, I don't understand miners and cold wallets and all this stuff. Chains and decentralization, and I don't know about all this. What about all these guys over here? That's a different game. Don't worry about them. So once you play for a little while, though, you get a hang of it. You're like, oh man, this game's awesome. Like, this is way better. Why did I ever play Monopoly? Monopoly just forces you to screw your friends over. It's like this Bitcoin game is more like, oh, if I help you, that helps me. That's
win-win.
Yeah, it's a win-win. Everything's a win-win in Bitcoin.
That's amazing. To me, it sounds like balance. Like it's going to bring balance to the whole nervous system.
Yeah, I mean, eventually, right? I don't know what it's going to do initially, because as the previous system is falling away, failing, whatever, transitioning, however you want to put it, I don't know what that actually looks like yet. It could be gradual. It could be sudden. I don't really know. I hope that it's gradual because it would be more peaceful that way.
Yeah.
But the truth is, it's a house of cards and it could collapse today.
That'd be crazy.
Yeah, it would be crazy. But the thing is that, like, you and I sitting here talking on a podcast and millions of other people doing this at the same time, if there's a moment of realization that we're living in an absolute farce, then there's a stampede.
Yeah.
Like, we're still mammals deep down back here in the back of the brain.
Yeah.
Like, we still have that mammal thing. The stampede could happen, right? I don't think there's enough people paying attention for that to happen, frankly.
Yeah.
You need a certain critical tipping point of like 10% or 20% of people or whatever to notice. Right now, there might be like 1% of people noticing, or something?
To be honest, it's something that ever since I moved to Austin, Texas, I've been around people talking about Bitcoin. I actually invested just like minorly like years ago, just
Nice,
like
dude.
randomly because I had heard about it. But uh, yeah, I haven't done any, like, not that much research on it. And that's why I wanted to learn more today, because it's like everybody I'm around is like, wait a second, Bitcoin's very important. Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. And it's like we can get caught up in our lives. So it's easy to, even if you're studying all these different things, it's easy to not even think about Bitcoin.
Yeah. It seems like a fringe, obscure,
Yeah.
niche topic initially when you
Yeah.
hear about it. The first time I heard about it was $30. And I told my buddy, why would I want digital Chuck E. Cheese tokens? That's stupid. Don't talk to me about that.
Yeah.
Then I watched it go to $1,200, and I never forgot that. That was the stupidest financial decision of my life. It still is,
Yeah.
you know, and it's painful. It's not painful anymore. I'm over it. But it's a good story because it shows the arrogance. It's
Right.
often said that the number one impediment to understanding Bitcoin is arrogance. Because people come in with a lot of assumptions and they think, oh yeah, Bitcoin, I know what that is. It's stupid.
That's kind of like everything. We have this, we hear of something so many times, and then we just kind of have some kind of oh, I know what that is, but we haven't really done any
Right.
research or like actually know. We just like, oh, I assume what that is.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's like, oh, I assume that.
And my journey over the years has been realizing that I do that with almost everything ultimately. Yeah. And so there's way less that I know than what I do know. And it's better for me to just come in with a beginner's mind to everything if I can. But the next thing I was going to say about it is like, you can't ignore Bitcoin. The fact that Bitcoin exists means it will affect you. It already is changing the world. Now that we live in a monetary reality where there's a new apex predator, you can't just be like, nah, it's not going to be my problem. Like, I'm over here with
So you think it's an apex predator?
It's going to eat every other currency. Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah, for sure.
Mind,
yeah.
100%.
The market always converges on one money eventually. And if it's digital, it's going to happen even faster than it has in the past.
Have we seen this in history in the past in civilizations as an example?
Yeah, if you read the Bitcoin Standard, it gives a really good breakdown. You have the rhinestones, you have like the sticks with the notches in it. You have like all these different ways of doing accounting throughout history. But it converges on gold because gold's the best money, or was the best money up until we reached the industrial age. Once we reached the industrial age, society was moving faster than the money could move. Because it's expensive to move gold around, it's risky, it requires guards, you have to verify that the gold is real and that it's all the same purity. There's a lot of problems with gold. And so what they did is they created banknotes to represent the gold. And for a time there was a tie, and you could move the banknotes, are much lighter, right? But then the tie was broken. It was officially broken by the Bank of England, I think before, right around World War I, and then it was broken again in the 70s. And that was the final straw. There hasn't been a gold currency since then. Gaddafi tried to make one, and Saddam tried to make one.
Wow.
Yeah. So like the system has been protecting itself very sufficiently since that time.
It's kind of like, though, everything that when something big and drastic changes in the world, there has to be something better to come in, to change that. It can't be something that's like on the same plane. It always has to be like much better than what we currently have. Because then people are like, wait a second, this is way better. And to me, it seems like, wow, this is way better. Like, wait a second, what is this US dollar thing? Like, that thing is going to keep increasing in value, and not decreasing.
I was just feeling a lot of gratitude for Satoshi and all the early guys that understood it, like that, because it proves the great man theory, which is what the communists hate. They hate the great man theory because the communists think in terms of labor being the most important part of the economy.
Communism.
Yeah. That's what the Marxists are all into, the labor theory of value. But the Austrians believe in subjective value, which means basically they'd explain it. Nothing has intrinsic value. It all has relative value to what people will pay for it, which is the reality of the situation. One guy, or maybe a small group of people, initiated this thing that is going to change the entire world. And as I see it, it's a reflection of what we were ready for. I mean, it came about after 2008. The reasoning behind it was because of the bank bailouts. So on one side, you have David Graeber, who is an anarcho-communist, and he was leading the Occupy Wall Street movement in a way. And then on the other side, you have Satoshi, somebody he never took credit, doesn't care, right? Well, David Graeber is also that way somewhat. And then he was an anarcho-capitalist, and he created this technology on his own that's completely voluntary. Nobody's forced to use Bitcoin so far. El Salvador kind of tried, it didn't work. And yeah, it's just brilliant. It really is a higher order of thinking, but it's a reflection of what we are ready for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's what it is.
I love that. That kind of goes across a lot of areas of life, of like AI is a reflection of what we are ready for. We're ready for evolving to a new level.
Yeah.
I think anything that comes into our life, like we have to be ready for it. We have to be on the same energetic plane of that thing to be able to perceive that thing. Wow. So what's the most meaningful thing out of this for you? This whole journey of being in Bitcoin?
So what I'm working on right now is a book called Hard Peace. It's kind of a play on another book called Soft War. Hard Peace.
Hard Peace, Soft War. Okay.
Right.
It's easy to remember.
They both mean the same thing ultimately.
Yeah.
But it's just a broader philosophical context. And what I'm focusing on primarily is, what doesn't money fix? Because a lot of Bitcoiners have this phrase, fix the money, fix the world. Bitcoin fixes this.
Yeah.
And it's cute and it's a good meme and it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But it's not ultimately true, because Bitcoin doesn't fix anything. The same way that hammers don't build houses and guns don't shoot people. Bitcoin doesn't fix anything, right?
The people do.
It's a tool that you can use to do things if you want to. Yeah.
Right.
So like, why is it that when people win the lottery, they often end up in a worse position 5 years down the road, right?
They don't know how to use it.
It's because money doesn't fix those problems, whatever that set of problems are, emotional problems, spiritual problems,
right? Yeah, relationship problems, mindset.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's more so what I'm focusing on right now, because in my opinion, we're past the point where there's any possibility of Bitcoin failing. We're moving into a point where the cascading effects of Bitcoin winning are going to amplify to a degree where we need to focus on what we do after we win. Because it hasn't quite unfolded yet. We're still super early, which is crazy. When it went from $30 to $70 the first time, I thought, I'm too late. And I bet a bunch of people are thinking, it's $84,000. I'm way too late. Yeah, just watch. Just watch.
Yeah, honestly,
early.
I got something at I invested at 50.
Oh, really? That was 2013 or something. Nice, dude.
No, it went up to
it was something else. It wasn't Bitcoin, because Bitcoin hasn't been $50 since 2013.
No. I meant 50,000.
Oh, 50,000. Okay.
50,000.
Okay.
Like that was a few years ago. I think it was like 2022, 2020.
Yeah,
like that.
It's been 50,000 many times. It has over the last 4 years.
Yeah, I remember it skyrocketed up, and I was like, "Shit, I got to get it now." And I know that's not the best. Traditionally for stocks, not the best move, but maybe for Bitcoin because of the longevity.
As long as you plan to hold it for 5 years, it doesn't really matter when you buy it.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, now with that information, I feel like, obviously do your own research, come up with your own conclusions, do that on your own. And this is like for me as well, I'm going to learn more and dive into this, read into this more. But clearly this is probably the most important thing for our whole society to start learning about.
In my opinion,
now's the time.
Maybe Bitcoin doesn't fix things, but if we don't fix the money, we won't fix anything. Nothing is going to improve until we solve this Federal Reserve issue. Yeah. That's just going to make things worse and worse and worse. Yeah. So everything gets more and more expensive, and there's greater and greater inequality, and it's just poverty. It's bad.
Yeah.
But we are fixing it gradually. A lot of people aren't paying attention. A lot of people are struggling their whole way into the solution. And I don't know. I mean, I can't force anybody to understand anything. Also, I wouldn't want anybody to purchase Bitcoin based on my confidence about it. That's totally antithetical to what Bitcoin represents. Bitcoin is about understanding it for yourself, doing the research so that you feel confident in it. At the same time, a vast majority of people don't understand how electricity works. They don't understand how the internet works, myself included, right? And I use it every day. Not everybody's going to have to understand it to the degree that I do.
Right.
And that's okay. I'd like for people to just be able to use it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Because you can just take a risk and spend a couple $100 or
Right.
couple $1,000, not giving any advice, but
Yeah. Just don't think about it. Just don't think about it.
Just jump in.
Turn your brain off. Feel it in your body. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I always ask this question, and then maybe we can talk about like well, you don't want people to find you, right?
Oh, well, SourceNode.xyz is my landing page.
Okay.
SourceNode.xyz. And if you go on Spotify, not Apple Podcasts, because Apple Podcasts requires me to put my ID in order to post a podcast. So I didn't do that. I don't like all that KYC stuff. So
put your ID in, like your
I was going to have to like sign up.
Or...
I was going to sign up with maybe it was my credit card, but either way, it was like something that was linked directly to me. I just didn't care for that. Right? It's not how I use the internet.
Yeah,
it's weird. It's intrusive.
Yeah.
So the Holotropic Renaissance lecture series on Spotify, and most other podcast apps.
Okay.
You can find it there. SourceNode.xyz is the landing page.
SourceNode.xyz is the landing page.
And you can find me on Nostr.
And Nostr, the leader on Nostr.
I'm the CEO of Nostr, yeah. I'm the executive marketing of Nostr.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. I thought you were joking.
I am joking. There's no CEO of Nostr. That's the whole point. It's
I don't even know what it is.
It's a protocol that doesn't have a big tech company behind it. And you can build apps on top of it. So we're potentially rebuilding the internet in a more decentralized way without a blockchain, without a token. It's none of this scam Web3 stuff. That stuff's not real. Nostr is real and it works. And it's still super early. It's rusty. But if you have developing skills, come on, check it out. If you're a content creator, come check it out. We can pay you directly in Bitcoin on Nostr. There's people making hundreds of dollars receiving Bitcoin on their posts, and it's
That's
fun.
Interesting.
And like everybody's chill for the most part on the same page. So it's a good place.
Through some of the comments, but that's an incentive to go check it out. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, so and then you have some books coming out.
A hard piece. I have no idea how long it's going to take me to write it.
Okay,
I'm like halfway through, and I've been halfway through for several weeks now, and we'll see.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that brings more peace to the world. I have one more question for you. So I always ask this to every guest to wrap up the conversation. If you could fast forward to the end of your life, and the last podcast I talked about, like if you're a cyborg by then, like 200 years old, 1,000 years. I mean, who knows at this point? Fast forward to the end of your life. Like right now, even if you want.
Like on my deathbed right now?
On your deathbed.
No, I'll be smiling.
But you're still alive.
Okay,
Maybe you're not on a deathbed. Like maybe you're like doing something
specific.
Cool.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm driving my Ferrari off a cliff.
There you go.
No.
Like
that's not the way to go.
But just that you're on your deathbed and you're at that moment before you're about to pass away. You're like, you know what? You're at that moment. And you think to yourself, you reflect to yourself back on your life and you go, okay, if there were 2 to 3 things, whether philosophies you lived by, goals, that you accomplished, or just ways of living, what would be 2 or 3 things for you that would allow you to go, you know what? It's okay for me to die in peace, to go to the next realm. What would that be for you?
Wow, that's a really good question, man. It's profound.
Thank you.
Love your neighbor, love God with all your heart, and make people laugh. If I can make people laugh and have a good time in this life, that's it. Like laughter is medicine.
100%. Well, SourceNode. Sorry. SourceNode.
No worries, man.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast, man. I really do appreciate it. And I really appreciate you wanting to make peace in the world and using your opportunity of being financially free, of being in a position in this part in your life to be able to give back and change the next generation significantly with your knowledge, with what you're talking about, with your writing. So I want to encourage you to keep going, man, because this is really, really valuable stuff. And I just want to thank you. for living your full potential life.
Thanks, man. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me on. I really
Yeah.
appreciate this conversation.
Yeah,
I see we're aligned on the mission.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, man.
Everybody out there, thank you so much for listening. Stay tuned for the next episode. And remember, do not settle, full potential or nothing. Peace. Don't forget to laugh. Okay.
Do not settle for a life that does not belong to you. Uncover and activate your fullest potential in this lifetime. Live your greatest life experience.
This is